Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. The translation of Surah Al-Asr. It is a Makki surah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Wal Asr. By the time, innal insana lafi khusr. Lo, man is in a state of loss. Illa allazina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Save those who have faith and do righteous deeds, and counsel each other to hold the truth, and counsel each other to be steadfast. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim.
Thank you, Eva, for this brief but most profound and meaningful recitation. In these verses, we are told about the fleeting nature of life and advised to do good deeds. It translates to, I swear by the passage of time that man is surely in a state of loss, except for those who believe and do good deeds and exhort one another to hold fast to the truth, and who exhort one another to steadfastness. Now I request Dr. Arvinder Ansari to please deliver her keynote address. Dr. Ansari will be speaking on the Women's Reservation Bill, Between Propaganda and Reality. Dr. Arvinder Ansari is a widely respected scholar who has been raising her voice on the issues of gender, minorities, and communal violence. Many of us have been privileged to read her scholarly books, namely Being a Minority in India, Issues and Challenges, Inter-Religion Marriages in Indian Society, and Communalization of Indian Society. As far as the Women's Reservation Bill is concerned, it has been a work in progress for more than 20 years. Will anything change now with the passage of the bill in the Parliament? I respectfully invite Dr. Ansari to please enlighten us on the Women's Reservation Bill.
Assalamu alaikum, and I take this opportunity to thank Madam Rahmatunnisa, who gives me this chance, quite often to come and interact and share my views. So, of course, this reservation bill is a question which is very important, and it is very important for women from minority communities to understand that how inclusive this bill is. But it is also very equally important to understand that what is the history of Women's Reservation Bill. What we see is, a movement which was not only started in 1984, it goes much more ahead. We see that how this whole debate of Women Reservation Bill has been formulated and presented to us. So, if we look at very important concern which is there is about what is the background of this bill is also very important, because if we look at the background, we see that citizenship, it concerns citizenship and how citizenship is very important. So, this concern on citizenship has been very important, and citizenship is something which is political right, and which entails to every individual, irrespective of caste, gender, class. It is there, and it is guaranteed to us by a supreme sovereign book, which is called Constitution. So now, very interestingly, we see that we have the rights, and the political right is not only to, political right not only entails right to vote, it is also that women are there. They are also there as a representative of women, which is very important. Now, this debate on the political empowerment of women is very old and very significant. Now, what do we understand by this whole idea about empowerment? Because empowerment is something which gives an agency to women. It's very important. So, to see that what is the political empowerment, if you look at the literature on feminism, it talks about personal as political. So this again is the question of women's reservation bill is political. We cannot, disagree that it's not a political question. So now it is very important. The political empowerment of women is very important. It is very important to see that there is a political system which works properly, efficiently, and is based on egalitarianism. That is the reason that we feel that it is very important. So there have been various researches, documentations which have talked about that how do we kind of involve women, how do we engage women, and we see that at global level, like for instance, if we see CEDAW, which means that there was a committee on the elimination of discrimination against women. This is a UN committee which was formed to see that there is no discrimination against women. Now, this talks about appropriate measures to eliminate discrimination against women in political and public life of any country where she is living. So, it ensures women on equal terms with men the right to vote in all elections and public referenda and to be eligible for election to all publicly elected bodies. Now you will ask me that it is there. Who stops women from contesting? Even our constitution does not stop, but what is there that women are not contesting? Women are waiting for this 33% reservation. Very interestingly, we have different narratives, and also there has been this question that who will benefit from the reservation? If you would see the debates in Parliament in 1984 or in 1993, the debates were that, it is women from the elite class who will benefit from this reservation and it will not percolate down. So this question has been very important question, and it has been resurfacing time and again. So government, how does government eliminate discrimination? Now, friends, this brings a question of equity and equality to us. Because why women reservation bill is required? The women reservation bill is required because it will bring in equity. Because, equality is fine, but before that, we have to bring women to that level where they are comfortable in participating in the political system or are ready for elections. So, to participate in the formulation of government policy and the implementation thereof and hold public office and perform all public functions at all government levels. So, it is very interesting also that we don't want titular heads. We want women of vision, women with agency, which is very important, to participate in non-governmental organizations and associations concerned with public and political life of the country. Now, this reminds me, very important statement in feminist studies that we don't have to adopt add and steer approach. Now, what is this add and steer approach? Add and steer approach is that, okay, you kind of do formality, you have women on committees, you have... So it is actually, the feminists have critiqued this approach of add and steer. They said women in their own capacity, in their own agency should be there. So, we see that the report of 4th World Conference of Women in Beijing, which was held from 14 to 15 September, also states, and I quote, "Without the active participation of women and the incorporation of women's perspective at all levels of decision making, the goals of equality, development and peace cannot be achieved." So it's very important that we, if in real sense we are talking about, friends, it's very different. Ideological situation, ideology is very different from the empirical situation. So it is very important that we, to be realistic, we bridge the gap between the ideology and the practice. So Beijing conference was very important in that context. It said that no, we need a structure, a social system where this equality is weaved in. So, the need for increased political participation has been given due space in Millennium Development Goals, and especially the Goal 3, which speaks of promoting gender equality and empowering women by taking into account proportion of seats held by women in national parliament. This is a global situation, so we are not different. What I want to say is that globally also we are looking at this situation, and there has been a global concern, and there has been a concern in women's movement about this. So the thing is, the degree of concern is different, but yet this concern is there, and somehow the women globally are united that they need more political participation. Why do they need more political participation is also a very important question, because without political participation, policy intervention is not possible. All these people who are sitting here, they are, active at civil society level. So civil society organizations can also bring in social transformation when we have a gender transformative policies. So it's very important the wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches. So women's participation therefore becomes very important. So, what has been the situation of women's right in colonial India? As I said, that history is very important. If we look at the history, we see women's participation in political life of present day dates back to the earlier 20th century, when organizations like Women India's Association, National Council for Indian Women, and All India Women's Conference were formed. That is in 1917, 1926 and 1927. The struggle for freedom from British rule provided further inputs and impetus to women's emancipation in pre-independence period, as a gradual transfer of power from British to Indian hands gave women experience in participating in the democratic process. A very interesting thing. This is a very unique situation in India, what happened. Women were very active during national movement, but suddenly with the Equality Report in 1975, we realized that, oh my God, where are women? Where are Indian women who were so active, who never felt they were shoulder to shoulder fighting with the men for the independence movement? And suddenly after 1947, in 1975, there is this report towards equality, which tells us that women are invisible. So why these women have become invisible? What are the reasons that they have become invisible becomes a very important question. So mass mobilization for women was not a very difficult concern. Women were active, but what makes them submissive and what pushes them back to the private spheres of their domesticity becomes a very important question. And what are the inhibitions? Because if you look at the question, women's participation in national movement, that brings from different. Recently we have, we hosted a seminar in Jamia. This was my center's initiative to talk about women, the forgotten heroines of freedom struggle. And interestingly, the focus of the seminar was not the mainstream women. The focus of the seminar was the women from minority and marginalized communities, tribals, Dalits, minorities. And we see that there is an amazing contribution to bring to support and to contribute to women's movement. So, this became a very important question. So, one needs to delve into this question. And if we look at the records, there were women like Swaran Kumari Ghoshal, Kadambari Ganguly, who were attending Indian National Congress meetings. And there were women who protested in partition of Bengal in 1905. We see contribution of Sarojini Naidu, who met Montague Chelmsford on constitutional reforms, demanding that voting rights of Indian women. And there we feel that somehow, one way Indian women have been very fortunate that they did have right to vote, for which we see Western women's movement had to fight for that right. So, there was always this effort that political participation of women, and we kind of inherited this question. What I want to say is that it is not, we should not say that this is bas 20 साल पुराना सवाल है. No, it's not 20 साल पुराना सवाल. ये बहुत पुराना सवाल है कि औरतों की जो पार्टिसिपेशन है, हक तो है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हैज गिवन इक्वल राइट्स, बट द प्रॉब्लम इज दैट एट द लेवल ऑफ प्रैक्टिस वी सी दैट there is inequality, there is discrimination, and it can be in the form of religion, it can be in the form of culture, it can be in the form of social structure, and politics has become such a concern for people that women, even very interestingly, if you look at this question, when the question I raised, that where have these women gone? Why have they become invisible? Because the stigma associated with the question of being in politics, being a ruler also. So women kind of are socialized in a way where they do not want to kind of break these notions, these stereotypical notions where, they want to come out of this. So when we look at women's political representation in post-independent India, we see that the question becomes more complicated. If they got the political rights, they got the right to vote, but we see later this question becomes more complicated. Though the Constitution of India, through its preamble, fundamental rights, fundamental duties, directive principles, aims for socio-political empowerment of women, and states have a special right in form of directive principles to motivate, to initiate, to make system more inclusive and make women to participate in it. So, but at the level of practice, we still find that they are not there. So state is to make special provisions in favor of women and children. Article 15 gives state that right. Article 16 states, and I quote, "There shall be equality of opportunity for all citizens in matters relating to employment or appointment to any office under the state." Section 16(2) also says that no citizen shall, on the grounds of sex, be ineligible or discriminated against in respect to any employment or office. And there is this article which is in Charcha these days, that is Article 325, 326 of Indian Constitution, which guarantees political equality to all. Yet women have not benefited from this right to the optimum. The National Policy for Empowerment 2001. Friends, I have always this concern about the concept of empowerment. How do we perceive empowerment? We see that, okay, education, economic independence, empowerment. No, I don't think. Malala was not educated when she reflected her empowerment. Bhavri Devi reflected her empowerment. These are women who were very courageous and who exercised their agency. So, उनको वो तगमा पढ़ाई का कोई डिग्री या कोई एम्प्लॉयमेंट की जरूरत नहीं थी. So, this misnomer that we are being empowered, and that is my concern. Who is empowering us? Constitution has already given us equal rights. So no one is empowering us. People talk about, states say that we are empowering women. So how are you empowering? Empowerment is already enshrined in the Constitution, that is there. But are we creating those spaces where women can exercise, where women can assert their agency is the question. Laws are there. Every year there are social legislations which are coming and which are talking about equality. But equality is not being practiced. And the first site where equality is not being practiced is family. Then it comes to society. Then it comes to community. So we have to see this intersectionality of patriarchy, family, community, state. State acts patriarchal. State also acts patriarchal because the social structure is patriarchal. I am not saying that we have to move to matriarchal society. Extremes of whether patriarchy or matriarchy are not going to give us dividends. We are aiming for a gender parity, gender equality. That is the concern, that we are moving to a very, very to a society which is more socially harmonious society. So socially harmonious society does not advocate any form of extremity. So the national policy of empowerment, women's empowerment, also is committed, and an affirmative action such as reservation, quotas, including higher legislative policies, and women may be considered on all echelons of the representation. we see that in September 22nd, and this chronology is important, friends, 1971, National Committee on Status of Women in India was formed. And it was appointed by Ministry of Education and Social Welfare. There were people like the commission had Phul Renu Goha, Latika Sarkar, Urmila Haksar, and Veena Majumdar as its members. Now, this move was in response to the United States CEDAW, which wanted to eliminate all forms of discrimination, eliminating any form of discrimination and violence against women. Now, this commission came up with a report which is called Towards Equality, the report of Committee of the Status of Women in India, and this report comes in the international year in 1975. So, now this report draws our attention to some of the alarming facts with regard to employment, political participation, health status of Indian women. That became a major concern. It called attention to existing gender inequality in education, income, access to healthcare, and political representation. Majumdar, in her Memories of Rolling Stone, says that Towards Equality report has also highlighted the issue of continued underrepresentation of women in the decision-making process of the country, and states that same can be seen as a sufficient indicator of the reluctance of our society to accept the principle of representation for women. So it becomes a concern here, and we see that this starts in 1975, that women are underrepresented in all aspects, whether it is polity, society, economy, they are underrepresented in education. And very interestingly, there is a very interesting study by Karuna Chanda which also points out the state of schools, how girls' schools are perceived, the mission and the vision. In many of the girls' schools, there were no laboratories, there were no playgrounds. So, if you have that kind of socialization and that kind of education, where it is considered, क्या करेगी लड़की फुटबॉल खेल के, या क्या करेगी लड़की लैब में जाके, उसके लिए होम साइंस कहीं बेहतर सब्जेक्ट है. So you see that whole vision. It is not that women suddenly went into oblivion after 1947. It is this path of development on which we usher the social institutions which we formulated. They were all gender insensitive. Similarly, if we look at our development paradigm, very important thing, post 1970, the situation was alarming in India and situation was alarming globally. Situation was alarming globally also because we see then it becomes an international decade of women from 1975 to 1985. So, with all these concerns, and very interesting, there is something to do with development, and you cannot claim that you are a developed nation until 50%, though we have an adverse ratio. But जब तक किसी भी country की महिलाएं या औरतें उनका education, उनकी health and their social status is not equivalent and does not meets the standards, so you cannot claim yourself developed nation. So it became a compulsion for the governments to look at, because the half of the population was underdeveloped. So how would and that cumulatively adds to your profile, your per capita income, your health, your education, your literacy rate, everything gets affected. So there was this concern, and we give them a little weightage that they were somehow interested also. So this 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, the attempt for these amendments became very important. So the question was that how do we now bring in women? So we see that a national perspective plan for women was formulated, which acknowledged the problem of women's underrepresentation in politics, in political sphere, and strongly recommended 30% reservation in local governance, that is Panchayat. Now, very important question is also related to Panchayat, and if you look at the reports which have come, that how instrumental women panches have been. And are these offices free of patriarchal control is another question which we need to look at. But somehow, so it was proposed, and 64th constitutional amendment in Parliament for reservation in all panchayats introduced in 1984 was actually defeated in 1984. However, in 1993, the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, which aimed to give rightful share to women in grassroots democracy, was enacted. Now, this what was 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act? Now, this 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act introduced that not less than 33% reservation for women in Panchayat Raj institutions in the rural area. Similarly, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act introduced reservation for women in Nagarpalika and municipalities in towns and urbans, as a result of which there were about 1 million elected women representatives in panchayats, municipal bodies. So now this is very important question. This is a turning point, though it is not foolproof. We do understand, when we do appreciate that social transformation takes place, there was this transition. So at least if we see that there were 1 million women, even if there were 50% of them were active. So at least, they ushered into an era where political participation there, and there have been success stories also. There have been stories of their, all these reserved seats, wherever there were these reserved seats, their husbands, women being the titular head and actual power being rested with the husband of the sarpanch. But there is a heterogeneity. It is not homogeneous situation. So we see that there have been success stories where women have brought in change. I was reading about Bhavri Devi. She is almost completing 50 or 60 years of her struggle. So I was reading last week somewhere about her. She was appointed as a Saheli to bring in a change as far as the education after she was raped, before she was raped, and she was there to stop the child marriages. And her intervention did make some effort, some change. Now, some interesting story is coming up that, the girl whom she wanted to save from the child marriage, who got married and who is now, I think, 50 years, she's brought up some case against her because, her uncle is being punished for raping Bhavri Devi. So there was this. But what I want to say is that the struggle is very hard. And we need these kind of affirmative actions. We need these kind of protective discriminations, which would usher us into to some hope. And similarly, when we look at Women's Reservation Bill, where the demand for 33% in Parliament has also gone through a very, very checkered journey. So, very important feature of women's movement in India was the continuous demand of reservation of women in state legislatures and parliament. As inclusion of women in the political structure and their proportionate electoral participation will not only correct the existing gender gaps in electoral arena and remove barriers and obstacles in confronting them, but also bring gender issues to the forefront, leading to women's empowerment and advancement in the society in long run. So, it's a long battle. The National Commission for Women, along with several other organizations, revived a more systematic struggle for introduction of the passing of Women's Reservation Bill from 1995. Several organizations like National Alliance of Women, National Federation of Indian Women, All India Democratic Women, the National Alliance of Women's Political. So there were a lot of women who kind of demanded that political parties should put it in their manifesto, the 33% to 50% allocation of seats to women at different levels. So, with the priority to SC, ST, OBC, urban poor and minorities. Now, this was very important, conceptualization. The conceptualization was holistic. What has been passed is not holistic. The conceptualization was that women from all. So, it was saying 33 to 50% because they didn't want to disturb already existing SC, ST quota, which was there. They said that should exist. And along with that, there should be a 33% reservation, which should be given to women from OBC, urban poor, minorities. So that it becomes almost around 50%. So, it is very important, as Zoya Hassan has pointed out in one of her articles, that it was more in line with the argument what Professor Hassan had formulated, that recognizing women as disadvantaged group, reservations are necessary to expand equality and opportunity and make the real to the formal equality given by. This is a very important point. Now, what happened? Friends, it's very strange as far as women's movement is concerned, women's status is concerned. After 1975, there has been no commission formed to look into the status of women. Towards Equality is one of its own report. After that, many commissions were formed, but we still have no report. So it talks about the escalation of discrimination. Women, the escalation of discrimination, violence, inequality in the society. It has increased. It has not decreased with so many laws coming, but still it is one major question. So, the Women's Charter for the 16th Lok Sabha was, for 2014 was that it should, set ceiling and it should have women's reservation. So they kind of felt that out of 4,120 MLAs, at least 360 should be women. And women, but interestingly, we see that with all these, many political parties have not kind of weaved in, and this is what the question is now. The question which is very important these days is that, and the question which is of concern to us is that even after, bringing in reservation, is it going to bring the desired change? Is one very important question. Because if we look at the Women Reservation Bill and the political will, so these are this Women Reservation Bill and the political will, there is a contestation. Whenever the bill has been tabled, there has been opposition, but this time, we see that somehow, it has been passed, and that is a very welcome step, but I'll come to this question later on. Very important is the inherent discrepancies in the bill is also very important, because when we look at Women's Reservation Bill, it has also intersectionality of caste and class, which also becomes very important. So, the debates on Women Reservation Bill do not bring out specifically or do not reflect only the patriarchy operates in Indian society, but also brings that how citizenship of women is into question. And Kalpana Kanibaram has argued the crux of the matter is that if women actually manage to push the legislation through, what is at stake is the political base of male politicians across the board. Second, the socio-political hegemonies in the existing social order is also very important question. So, feminists have argued that there are feminists who argue for and against the reservation for women, because they say that caste-based arguments are which are saying that it will increase the polarization. So we need to first negotiate caste and class factionalism, which is very important. Second very important concern is also to negotiate urban and rural divide which is existing into our society. So there is a question of insiders and outsiders, which is very much part of Women Reservation Bill, and we have not talked about it. We have talked about Women Reservation Bill. We have not even talked about the execution and how we would be able to kind of, negotiate these divisions which are there in the Women Reservation Bills. Now, now coming to this very important question about the current 128th amendment, which has which have seen the passage of this bill, is a very important initiative, no doubt about it. We appreciate. So the legislation seeks to allocate 33% seats in state and central legislative bodies for women, which is very low. If we see the proportion, it is 15 in Lok Sabha and 12 in Rajya Sabha. But very important question is, in these years there is something which has changed. Interestingly, there are many studies which are pointing out women's constituency, women's agency in political participation. One very important thing, very positive thing which has happened is women's share in political participation, that is as voters, is increased. Now, this is secondary question, that how do they choose to vote, on whose behest they vote is a different question. But number of women voters has increased, and that has been established by UP elections last year, that it was women who kind of were very important constituency in UP elections last year. So this has been recognized, and maybe very interestingly, if you look at the whole philosophical orientation of this bill, of this 128th amendment, at the background, we have just finished celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, that is 75. And that was kind of the 75 years of independence were devoted, dedicated, and now with the bringing of this women reservation bill, the idea which is being propagated is that we have moved from Sabka Saath to Sabka Prayas, Nari Vandana. So what is Nari Vandana in that? Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas से Sabka Prayas. So Sabka Prayas should not have been a hesitant decision. That are the challenges which are there, and it is very important, the operationalization part of it. And second very important thing is that, is this going to be inclusive? That is the question which is very important question. The inclusivity of the women reservation bill. We see that there has been a change. Women have been participating. If you look at, there are data, there are reports which will tell you that now, from 1947, when the percentage of women in parliament was somewhere between 4.7, has gone up to 12%. And, it has increased. So I'm not saying that we don't need women reservation bill, but what I'm saying that we need to review the women reservation bill, and it has to be contextualized in the present context when we are facing a very important challenge in our society about marginalization of minorities. How this bill is going to impact the participation of women from minority communities, and especially from OBC, is a very, very important question. So, there has been a gradual increase in the number of female MPs in the Lok Sabha, from mere 5% in the first Lok Sabha to 15% in the current. This is the new latest. In the 17th, a total of 716 female candidates participated in the 2019 general election, out of which 78 were successful. Now see, 716 to 78. Only 78 were elected. Now, this also speaks, very important, but it is increased. In 2000, there were 62 women MPs who were elected. My question here is, what stops the present political party, BJP, Congress or other parties, whether there is reservation or no reservation, to bring in more women into their fold and into leadership roles? Bill is okay, a constitutional provision. But political parties who are wanting, and we see somehow, friends, that it has been the same treatment. It has been a discussion in the drawing rooms, but when it really comes to an action, we see it still lacks, that rigor. And very interestingly, this bill cannot be operationalized Some say before 2026, but then the reading of political scientists says that it might even go beyond 29. Interestingly, we have not done our census and we don't know when we are going to hold the census. It has been postponed and it can be further postponed. And what happens to delimitations? So a delimitation is also there into practice. So it says that, it is like a post-dated check हमको दे दिया है, वो अब cash होगा या bounce होगा वो हमें पता नहीं है. And वो भी नहीं पता है, and we don't also know that how it is going to improve the situation of the women, the last women there. Actually, that is the idea of that how inclusive it is. It's still, there is a big question mark. So, the current legislation mandates that 33% reservation for women continues for 15 years. The bill needs ratification from minimum of 50% of the states. The constitutional reasoning for requiring ratification by states is the potential impact of the bill on the right of the states. Seats reserved for women bill will be rotated each delimitation exercise. So, ये delimitation exercise का period क्या होने वाला is also question. Nothing has been spelled out. So, it has been a very, very hasty passing of this bill. The reservation, thank you. The reservation is proposed to be implemented after new census is published and the delimitation exercise is completed. Now, this is very important that delimitation exercise has to be completed. The process of delimitation entails Thank you. The process of delimitation entails revision of constituencies boundaries pertaining to Lok Sabha and state assemblies with the aim of accurately reflecting the increase of population distribution. Now, this is very important, and the conservative estimates say that it will not be implemented in 2029 also, because many opposition parties feel this amounts to be a fraud on women and have demanded its immediate implementation. They say that why don't you immediately implement? The demand is that the provisions of delimitation and census can be done away. So if you look at the spirit of the bill, so it is very important that we implement right now with the rectification. That rectification has to be undertaken. Why? Because if we really want to empower women, why do we want to wait for another, 9 years or 8 years? Why do we want to wait for another 8 years? Because we cannot think of gender equality, which is very important, because the gender equality questions is important to address violence against women. The question of escalating violence, female feticide, child marriage, dowry, domestic abuse, sexual harassment, and new forms of violences are with the digitization of the society. We see that new forms of violences are also emerging, and how do we deal with these new forms of violence also becomes a very important question. So, now very important is that what the women organizations, civil society organizations need to do. For them, it is very important that they demand that the bill should improve the quality and effectiveness of governance and policy making in India. That should be the prime concern. There are many studies which have shown that women legislatures tend to be more responsive, accountable, tend to be more, they are kind of more, the whole socialization process of women is very different. So somehow, sincerity, attention, meticulous is something which is part of our DNA. हम लोग सब वैसे ही काम करते हैं because we kind of want that kind of sincere effort, whether it is cooking a meal for our family or it is addressing policies. So that approach, because it has been part of our socialization, so it is very important that they need to focus on these questions. And friends, I would again seek your attention on COVID-19. COVID-19 also has proved that whenever there is a situation, whether it is a man-made disaster or whenever it is a natural disaster, it is women who play very important and significant role in societies in rebuilding, rehabilitating the societies. It's they who take the significant role there. So by increasing the number of women in parliament and assemblies is very important, because it accepts policies and laws will be more inclusive, progressive and beneficial for all sections of society. So we don't need to wait. We can bring in another amendment. The idea is that, to make this bill more effective, to make this bill more comprehensive, to make this bill more inclusive. So amendment can be brought in as far as delimitation is concerned, and because now we have started talking about caste census, that has become so politicized, we don't know when census would be done. So the foremost concern is the bill will create, what I was saying, that it is very important to look at the intersectionality of caste and class. So this bill is the bill in present form will create divisions among women based on caste, religion, region and class. That intersectionality which I talked about is very important. So different political parties, they have not reached on consensus. They have kind of approved the bill, but the operational part has not been, there is no consensus on that. So some parties have demanded that within the 33% reservation for women, there should be sub-quota for women from backward classes and minorities, which is very important. Because we see that when we are talking about participatory development, on what grounds we are talking about participatory development? Participatory development demands that kind of inclusivity. It is very important that women from all sections, from all communities, from all denominations should be represented in this 33%. They should have their representation, so that we assure, because it's very important. Why it is important that we have women from backward castes, we have women from minorities? Friends, these years, and my own research in gender studies for so many years has told me, has educated me to respect, to learn about the heterogeneity of the women. Even Muslim women, when we talk about Muslim women, are they homogeneous? No. They are very much heterogeneous. Their cultures are diverse. Muslim women coming from Bengal, coming from Punjab, coming from Bihar, coming from South India, and also rural-urban divide, education, illiterate. So there are different situations, and that is what is very important, where, they should have intellectuals also on the advisory board, and women who have been working in women's studies, who can tell them about the women's stand positionality. So this demands to understand women's stand positionality, and when I say women's stand positionality, I mean the situation, the groundedness of that women is very important. तभी तो वो हम जब तक उस तबके तक नहीं पहुंचेंगे जहां पे सही में जरूरत है बदलाव लाने की, emancipation लाने की. The whole idea about is emancipation. Emancipation is a broader idea than empowerment. Emancipation is the sense of relief, the sense of being free. So freedom in its own way, the way I perceive my freedom, should be reflected in this. And that is why representation from all communities, all sections and all. So we have to look into the pervasiveness, the intersectionality of religion, region, which is very important. So we don't want another fragmentation. Very interesting thing has happened. Though I can talk from my own experience. When I look at the women's movement in India, we see that there has been fractions in women's movement in India since 1986, after Shabana movement, Fir Gudiya, Imrana, Roop Kanwar, Sikh women's also getting, disillusioned after 1984. So there has not been a very strong, consistent, women's movement in a way. Or I'm not saying that there is no women's movement. There is a very, very strong women's movement. But that inclusivity in women's movement is still a concern. It's a grave concern there also. That is the women's movement reflecting the voices of women from all sections. So now, if this further comes and leads to further fraction, so that that gender affinity across class, at least that gender affinity you see, एक महिला जो गरीब परिवार से आती है, चाहे वो हिंदू है, चाहे वो मुसलमान है, चाहे वो सिख है, चाहे ईसाई है, her concerns are same. Their ways of looking at problem might be different, resolving that problem might be different, but poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, COVID-19, they all affect. So they affect. So it is very important to address these questions, and we don't want further fragmentation as far women's constituency is concerned, because now it is, friends, not the question. It is they are looking at women as a constituency, and women reservation bill becomes, because why this bill has come so hurriedly. They have done proper studies. They know that women is an important constituency. They go for it, and minority women score more. आप देखिए जब वोटिंग होती है तो मुझे लगता है मैक्सिमम वोटिंग इस इलाके से होती है. देयर इज so it is very important. So it has its own, they are working on their own permutations and combinations as far as women reservation bill is concerned. So there is apprehension that this new system may disrupt existing electoral system and political dynamics. By reserving seats for women by rotation, the bill may create instability and uncertainty in the electoral process. This may affect the continuity and accountability of legislatures, who will have to change their constituencies frequently. It may affect the loyalty and representation of voters, who will have to choose from among different candidates every time. So this is one step forward, but I see 2 steps backward. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an enlightening talk. May we have power of emancipation. Now I invite our much loved and widely respected Rahmatunnisa Madam, National Secretary, Jamaat-e-Islami Hind, to give concluding address.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Ameen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Thank you so much, Dr. Madam Arvinder Ansari. It was such an informative talk that you gave. And really, even I was noting down the points, and the way you concluded, 1 step forward and 2 steps backward. But we need to ensure, whoever is concerned about our society and our country, we need to ensure that, and this 2 steps backward, we will make it 100 steps forward. We have to. So I don't think I need to have a very lengthy concluding address now. So first of all, why reservation? In any situation, even at home, when we deal with different people in our family, 80-year-old grandmother to an infant, a baby, do we serve them equally? We don't serve them equally. Each one has a reservation. Like even in the quantity of the food, you make biryani at home and you don't serve the same quantity or same biryani to the infant and the grandmother. So in the society, equality doesn't mean serving equally to everyone. It means serving what is required for each person, and that is called as equity. And that is where the question of reservation comes. Those people, those communities, whether gender-based or caste-based or religion-based, regional-based or color-based, language-based, whatever it is, those communities, those section or fraction of society or people who had been subdued and deprived of their rights, whether it is human rights or whether it is their fundamental rights, constitutional rights, whatever it is, they should be given a hand to bring them up. That is called as reservation. And we all know the situation in India. As Madam has rightly pointed out, this reservation bill cannot be called as a reservation as long as it doesn't consider the backward, the OBC communities, including Muslims. So, those who do not enjoy the social privilege, they should also be given a chance to enjoy equal privilege. That is the concept of reservation, and that is where democracy becomes real democracy, a democratic system. If it is the rule of the people, for the people and by the people, it has to have equal opportunity. It should be, as Madam said, inclusive, and everyone should get a chance. And this is for this purpose that reservation, whether it is in the political field or economic field, education system, job market, wherever it is, that is why reservation is being kept as a provision. It is there in the constitution also. Otherwise, what will happen is the poor will remain poor, the underprivileged will remain underprivileged, the backward will remain more and more backward only as time passes. And the gap will only widen and increase. So, what is the reality in India? Madam has rightly pointed out. Only 10.5% of all MPs, according to the Election Commission 2021, Election Commission says that only 10.5% of all the elected MPs include women. And it is lower than Sub-Saharan Africa with 26%. Nepal has 34%, and even Pakistan has 20%. So it is lower than that. So this political participation of women, it will automatically result in improvement in the field of economy, education, and the other areas also. Because when the policy makers make the policies, make rules and regulations with a gender lens also, by looking at the other side, the other genders, women's point of view also, women's side also, there will be better consideration for making women the entire atmosphere more female friendly. We always argue and we always demand for female friendly atmosphere in schools, colleges, marketplace, public places. So this will happen when women are also included in the decision making, not only women friendly. See, as Madam has pointed out, this being that motherhood spirit of a woman, it is embedded in every woman. Biologically, maybe you are not a woman, but that is embedded in every woman. And a woman, she will never think only for women. For everyone, whether children, men, women, for everyone, the whole society as a whole, usually that is the nature of women to think about. So, including more women means the entire system will be more inclusive. So, we need to have reservation, but the problem is that of how it is more of a political game or a political drama that has been going on than really the real spirit or intention. And this problem of delay, usually we say justice delayed is justice denied, and how many years? So it has been going on, and the strange reasons like census and delimitation, we can't understand what is the connection. Many have pointed out, and Madam has also pointed out. And the ruling party, we need to recall or remember their policy also with regards to women's empowerment and women's reservation bill. We must remember what Yogi Adityanath once said. He said that it is a Western idea. Women's reservation itself is a Western idea, he said before. And he was totally against it. So, this delay saying about this census, and only when it comes to women and OBC, all these obstacles come. That is what we don't understand. So, and one more thing, Madam has rightly pointed out, and again I want to underline and appeal to all political parties, even the opposition parties who were, very strongly speaking for the bill in the parliament. Why should you wait? Today itself you can decide that in my party, in our party, we will give tickets not to even 33%, even 50% of women and engage women. Wow, who is stopping you from that? And it's not because we don't have dearth of talented, qualified women. We have. Only problem is the acknowledgement of women's caliber. It's not a question of empowering women. It's a question of acknowledging and involving women that is lacking in our society in every field. And regarding caste and religion, see, caste and religion, it's a reality in the Indian society. It is deep rooted in the Indian mind. We can't pull it. We can't get rid of caste, or we can't get rid of religion from the Indian society. Some people argue for that, especially the feminists, some of the feminists, or more liberal thinking. It sounds like a liberal thinking, but I believe that there is a saying that if you cast a vote in India, you are voting your caste. So that much it is deep rooted. And some people say that no, we have to come out of it. But what I believe is more liberal way of thinking is you accept that identity of the caste. You accept that identity of the religion, whether that person is a Muslim or a Christian or a Dalit or an Adivasi, whatever it is. You accept that person as per that identity and vote for that person. Are you ready for that? This is a mind that we have to develop, and this is a mind that we have to create. So, getting rid of caste, or that is not it's not required actually to progress. And another point is that also Madam has hinted, Panchayati Raj, there were many women who contributed really very well, brought very good progress in their panchayat, but still there are many who worked or acted like puppets or rubber stamps. Someone must be doing the backseat driving, the man in the family or the man in the party, and she might be only. So that shouldn't happen. And even when the bill was being discussed, the much celebrated Dalit woman president of India, she was absent from the parliament. So that shouldn't happen. So our women should be trained, or the vote or the ticket should go to such women who have the courage and who have the will to work and who have the voice. And in this context, as a conclusion, I would also like to suggest not only to political parties, the other social and religious organizations, or NGOs and all, in every decision making body or in every parties or in every organization, include women, especially in the higher bodies, decision making bodies. And you can go for reservation or whatever for that matter. And there is another interesting thing which we have, not interesting, a matter of concern, whether the whole thing gets practically implemented also. The question is, or the discussion is on minimum 33%. That doesn't mean that a woman cannot contest in general seats. This happens even in the education, university admission and all. Whenever there is a reservation quota for the job or the admission, we have cases of the university authorities advising a minority community student, even though the student is eligible for the merit seat, advising the student to take only the reserved seat, minority quota. The idea or the tactics behind that is so that the general seat can be reserved for somebody else from some other community. So that shouldn't happen. Even in buses and all, in Kerala it is there. We have reserved seats for women in the front seats. So if a woman goes and sits at the back side, where usually men sit, but that is not a reserved seat, it's a general seat. But we can see people commenting, she is sitting in the men's seat, why can't she go and sit in the women's seat? Actually, there is no such men's seat. It is like a few seats, 2-3 seats are reserved for women and 1 seat for the disabled, like that. But all other seats are general, where anyone can sit, including women. So this is also something which is there in our society in every field. So this also has to be taken care of. So on the whole, from the grassroots level to the parliament, women's voice should be heard, women's involvement and participation should be there, her experience, expertise should be valued and acknowledged for a more inclusive and balanced society and nation. That is what the conclusion of today's program, I think. We all need to work for that. So anything, whether it gets passed in the parliament and wherever it is, but only when every citizen tries to work for it, it becomes a reality. May the Almighty bless all of us. Wa akhir da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Finally, I invite Dr. Hafsa Tasneem to give vote of thanks.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Assalatu Wassalam ala Rasulihil Kareem, wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajmain. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I, Dr. Hafsa Tasneem, on behalf of Jamaat Islami Hind Womens Wing, I extend my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to all of you for attending this program and for blessing us. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khaira. First of all, I express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Without Allah's help or nusrat, it's impossible to arrange this event. Alhamdulillah. And then I would like to thank Mrs. Rahmatul Nisa, Madam, National Secretary, Jamaat Islami in Women's Wing, for her efforts. May Allah accept and bless her. And I would like to thank all the delegates and dignitaries of Jamaat Islami Hind for their efforts. Jazakumullah khaira. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to our speaker, Dr. Arvinder Ansari ma'am, for her lecture, for her explanation. Your thoughts and ideas have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path as we listen an inspiring exchange of knowledge and ideas, reflections on the topic Women's Reservation Bill between propaganda and reality. A special vote of thanks goes to our committee members for their efforts. Jazakumullah khaira. Our gratitude would be incomplete without acknowledging the presence of each one of you. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, we will organize such programs in the future. I hope you all will join again us. Inshallah, it will be continued. Thank you so much. As we conclude, let's carry forward the lessons we have learned today. Let's motivate ourselves to be beneficial for the humanity. Once again, thank you so much. Jazakumullah khaira.